everybody. Welcome to this special bonus episode of Boys Watching Girls. We are two boys just watching HBO's Girls. Things are going to be a little bit different this episode because for the past couple seasons, we've been talking about some controversies that Lena Dunham may have gotten herself into in the past. And we didn't really know all of the details when it came to these controversies. So we wanted to take some time and do our research, really check out what it was all about, because we'd only heard like light murmurs about what was going on without knowing the full story. So now that we have done a little bit more of a deep dive, I feel like we feel more comfortable addressing these. So we are your hosts. I am Joe Welke.
I am Vance.
And we're finally going to get to this episode where we kind of get to the bottom of some of these things that we've only slightly hinted at in the previous episodes. I know that we talked about we need to do our research and actually check these out before we talk about them. And we did that. We did some light reading on some dark and weird, depressing subjects.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I feel comfortable about any of this.
Yeah. I will say that I feel more comfortable being like, oh, okay, now I understand the details surrounding this.
I mean, I just didn't want us to ever bring up this stuff. We have done it in past episodes where we kind of allude to stuff, but we didn't want to dive in and we didn't want to pull a Lena Dunham really and kind of just say something without giving it the proper thought and reflection and actually knowing the situation, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, full disclosure, we might even still not fully understand what was going on because we weren't there. We don't know the exact specifics. All we know is reports that we've read and eyewitness accounts or whatever. But we aren't Lena Dunham. We weren't there in these situations. So take all of this with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But we did want to talk about it before it's we've only alluded to them and we didn't know the details, and now I feel like we've got a little bit more of the details, but obviously we don't have the complete full story, but we have a bit more of an understanding.
We're not reporters or trying to report anything, and the one we would be remiss if we didn't bring up anything about it while we're doing a whole 6 seasons of a show that she wrote and created.
Exactly.
But we also are just kind of, luckily, there's been enough time that has passed in some of this stuff that we can actually see it out of context. And now that we're visiting something that was an issue 6 years ago or when it first came out or so, now we can be like, okay, this is what said then and this is how it's been reported on and this is what came out later. It's not like she did something yesterday and we're like, this is what happened, you know? So. Yeah.
Well, it's also I feel like we needed to talk about, because a lot of the stuff in the show Girls, there are some parallels to these controversies and it's hinted at in the show.
Yeah.
So that's why we're we should really get to know what the actual story is before we go off talking about it in our show reviews.
Yep.
And so here we go.
I'm as excited to do this as I was the first podcast we did on the show. I was I don't know what to say.
So it's interesting that talking about this, because Lena Dunham on her Wikipedia page, she has a whole portion of the page dedicated to the controversies that she's had. And it's not a small amount of controversies. No. She's been in hot water quite a few times, it seems like, where it's it doesn't seem like, I don't know, for as celebrated as this show was, I guess, or as not monumental, but a cultural moment as it was, you wouldn't think that the show's creator would have so many controversies, even while the show is still going on. But this show had some controversies from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely. From season 1, it seems like it's already been a thing. People have been canceled for less. Kevin Hart couldn't host the Oscars or something because of a gay joke on Twitter from when he was first. I mean, whenever he did it. I mean, not saying that the joke is fine, but it's not like it's like, I mean, people love Ted Danson. He was in blackface with Whoopi Goldberg at one point. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing like how certain people get like through this, and we'll probably talk about that too. Like, and I'm not saying we should come down hard on Ted Danson now, but like, it's one of those things where you have to say, hey, this happened, and is it something that now that it's revealed, do we want to like now cancel a person because of that, or is that person, or was, you know, it's a lot of it's a tough one.
So I mean, one of the first controversies that got Lena Dunham in some hot water was the fact that this show, Girls, featured an all-white cast while being set in New York City, which is the most diverse place in the world.
Which is, to me, the craziest thing to come down on this show about. When a show like Friends and Seinfeld and every other sitcom from that time period comes out, I'm like, that's what you're gonna blame this show? Like,
oh yeah, like, this show has so much more problematic stuff, like the end of season 2 being trash.
And this is the thing, we don't want, because then shows started doing this. They would throw the one black person in, or at one point they started throwing the one Indian character in to a show, and it's just like, yeah, are you just doing that to see like, I have checked off the box, here's our diversity, you know? Like, even if you're looking at Big Bang Theory, which I'm not judging that show or anything, but like, oh, we have the nerdy Indian guy in it, you know? Could that guy, if he had been Asian, if he was like Chinese or something, would it be like, ooh, that's way too offensive? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, because that's the way these people think when you're making these products.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people that go into writers' pitch meetings, and then the question is, after their pitch, they're like, where's the diversity?
Yeah.
There's got to be diversity now. And I guess the Lena Dunham didn't have that back when this was like getting done 8 years ago.
Also, I don't want Lena Dunham writing about like, I'm happy that no random black person is just thrown into this world of this, like, for me.
Right?
Like, yeah, this is a specific story to Lena Dunham's life and world and that part of Brooklyn. Like, if you're in Williamsburg, there's a lot of white people in Williamsburg. You're going to see a place where there's 4 white friends eating like out. And you will see black people hanging out too. You'll see Hispanic, Latino. But I don't think it's more of an overall thing of the system than it is about Lena Dunham's show not having a diversity. Like, who's the people in the higher top that choose to say this show is the one we want to make, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the criticism of the show was like the whole first season. There's only like 2 black actors, and one of them was a homeless guy, and the other was a taxi driver.
Yeah. And that's something that you can hear people talk about. If you listen to like Ron Funches, he has a podcast with Malcolm Barrett, and they're talking about like how all the roles that they used to go out for were all like either like this homeless guy or like the gangbanger and stuff. If you know Ron Funches and Malcolm Barrett, they're not. Those aren't. That's not who they are. But Malcolm Barrett is in Sopranos, and he's playing like a crackhead, like drug dealer, of course, and that's like one of his earlier roles because that's what they were casting. You know, like
I mean, my old roommate, Atif Myers, like he's Arabic and black, and like all the roles that he would be sent out on was like terrorist stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like, that's just how fucking Hollywood works. And it's like, not saying that's right.
No, it's not right.
But like, it's fucked up, but that's just fucking how it works. And it's weird.
But yeah, I just don't think that that's the thing to criticize Girls about when all the other shows, like, I'm not going to say, you know what, Succession, I really like it, but they don't have enough black people. I'm like, that family would not have this.
Well, that's the thing too, is like Lena Dunham's response basically to the criticism was like, I'm writing about my life. This is like semi-autobiographical. Yeah. This is just the world that I saw.
Yeah.
And then so the next season they had Donald Glover in, and then people criticized that even more because they were like, now you're tokenizing like just throwing a random black guy in just because we said that it was all white.
Yeah,
it's like,
and I thought
it's hard to win.
I thought the way that they utilize his character, I mean, you could argue that, but the way they utilize his character was to poke fun at her for her views of stuff. Like, she is awful at that, and like they have that breakup, and it's a very powerful, like poignant moment where he's just like frustrated with her, and it's like she's showing that people do have that, like whether or not she does, which she knows that she probably inherently does have in her, like just like not purposefully, not maliciously, but it's in her.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting because that is like, I thought that was an interesting character to have in because he was a black Republican.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, I don't know personally any black Republicans. So that was even like an extra hint of like weird diversity where she's like, how could you be Republican? Don't you know, like that's against, you know, what black people stand for or whatever. Like you're voting against your own interests, which is, I don't know, man.
Elijah kind of goes at him because Elijah's gay and like the whole like, and this, we have to note that this came out around the time when Obama's elections and when women's rights and abortion and gay marriage were like, they're still in the forefront of news, but this is when it like reached its peak of saturation of stuff. Like before this, it wasn't like the abortion stuff and gay marriage was a thing, but like this was where peak levels of debate about this stuff was coming down.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is like when Obama first got in office, he got in saying that he was against gay marriage. And then over time, I mean, I don't know if that's actually how he felt, but it was like a necessary thing to say for back then if you wanted to gain votes, and people had their issues with that. And over time, I guess it was like, okay, now I do support gay marriage, and I think this should be like allowed across the country. And so it was like a really weird time of like racial issues with Obama being president, and sexual orientation issues with the gay marriage thing. So it was really weird to have like a black Republican character in the show and have that conversation. So it was like,
and it's also interesting to know like where Donald Glover has gone from that point to like making Atlanta, and then the We Are America song. Like to
This
go,
Is America.
This is America, like that, to the point where like he's like now I'm like, oh, this guy you go to for like, hey, what is your like? And if you listen to his earlier raps, he talks about like being into like stuff, like how there's a lot of black kids into like anime, which was not something that was a thing when I was growing up. Like you would probably be made fun of if you were watching anime.
Yeah, his whole...
but like the quote unquote nerd culture and like geek culture and like different things being taken, like it's been diversified because like Donald Glover is not like he's a rapper, but he's not he's not the like drug dealing, braggadocious, this is what I do, I'm sleeping with like 20 girls kind of rapper, which was the cliche, like typical, like this is black people kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, his whole stand-up special is about how he's a nerd. Yeah. And like how he loves Spider-Man, and I mean he wanted to be Miles Morales in the Spider-Man movies for like so long,
and instead he played like a arms dealer or something.
Yeah, he played a villain, but it's like he's supposed to be Miles Morales' like uncle or cousin or something. Yeah. So he's in the Spider-Man movies, which is like kind of a consolation prize. But then he got to be Lando Calrissian in Solo, which was not a good movie.
He got to play Simba, which is where people think when you think Africa, you think Lion King.
Yeah, man.
I wanted to bring up, I saw this, I don't know if you saw this, because we're talking about Obama and election stuff. She got a lot of pushback from the conservative side for an ad she did for Obama. Where I
did not see this.
It's like a minute-long video, and it's her talking about basically getting out to vote. Like it's for his re-election campaign, and she's like, my first time, and they're alluding like your first time to like your first time having sex. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
and it's more tastefully done. It's like jokes of like, yeah, you don't want to be like, you don't want to do it. And then like 4 years later, find out this person did that, like it's always little double entendre kind of metaphorical stuff. And it's fine. It's completely on brand for her. But of course, like the way they beat her down for that was, oh, she's like making fun of virgins and taking this. I was like, okay, yeah. Like in 2020, I can see how that's been. Like Breitbart was attacking her, like for that. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, when they start attacking you, we already know.
I mean, some of those things are like really ticky-tacky, and you can derive any kind of meaning that you want.
And I'll say this,
some of the arguments.
There are plenty of reasons to not like Lena Dunham based off of stuff that she said and stuff in the show. If you want to go, I mean, if you're looking for a reason to just like, I do not like this person. I don't like when they like dig when they're trying to find something that's not there as much,
Yeah, or ascribe meaning to something like, and it's like you're really stretching for a controversy there.
I mean, two of the biggest ones that we'll bring up are the controversy in her book and the controversy with Odell Beckham, which is more recent.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think we should segue to the book thing.
Yeah.
Now, because in the book, there's actually quite a bit of controversy in her books. So she had a book that was like, I guess a memoir called Not That Kind of Girl, A Young Woman Tells You What She's Learned. And the first big controversy that stemmed from this book was she wrote about being sexually assaulted while in college. And that led to like a lot of gray area in terms of like the description of the account and who actually was the person that assaulted her, and the person that, the alleged assailant ended up suing her because he felt like he was being, I guess, besmirched and slandered in her book. And it was just, this is like such a touchy subject because it's like, we don't know what happened. Obviously, we weren't there.
Yeah, he said,
I don't know.
He said, she said stuff is the hardest.
Yeah, and it's the toughest stuff to address.
Well, and the thing here is though that she never really said who it was. It was just kind of like it was a person this way. She never gave a full name. She used an alias. But once this other person comes out and tries to defend themselves from it, right? Like they retracted it from the later books, the later prints of the book.
Yeah, they retracted it, and Random House said on our own behalf and on behalf of the author, regrets the confusion regarding this statement that went out in the book in the first printings, I guess. And this quote unquote Barry guy that was the person that was hinted was the person that sexually assaulted her. He ended up suing her, and it's a really sticky situation. Yeah. And I don't know how to address it.
Yeah, this is one I didn't know
how to bring it up.
I didn't even know about as much. Like that like the book stuff. I knew of the other thing that we're going to talk about in the book more so. Yeah. Without really diving into it. But yeah, this one I didn't know that.
I didn't know much about this one either. But then I was reading into it and I was like, oh, this is also really weird.
And the thing about this is that there's also just a lot of stuff and jokes in Girls relating to molestation. Like when Jessica's there and she's like, oh, I was molested by my teacher. I don't know, maybe. And then when she's talking to her cousin, she's like, I thought we could joke about being molested by our uncles together and stuff. Like there's a lot of molestation jokes in Girls.
Which, and that's why it's like we don't know what the situation is. And there's a lot of like assault talk in the show and like you said, molestation stuff. And that's why we were like, we want to read into this kind of stuff and see what the actual story is. Because when we initially reviewed the episodes, we didn't know the full story. And we still don't know the exact full story. But that's why we're like, we should definitely look into it at least a little bit before we talk about it.
Well, yeah.
But this one was weird. I don't know how they settled it. I guess it was just like the reprint of the book with the clarification.
Yeah.
I don't know if
or
this
I think
guy
it
that
omitted
sued,
the alias because I don't know, something like that.
yeah. But the other thing in the book that we've talked about on the show a couple times that we didn't really know is the stories regarding her sister. I thought it was her cousin. Like I knew it was some relative, but apparently it was her sister. And Lena Dunham talks about doing some weird kind of sexual stuff with her sister when she was a kid. And I'm not sure. I feel like I should just like read it.
Oh, I've read about this. So the thing is, when she was 7,
and her sister was 1.
Yeah, like her sister was a toddler. She like, because there's some sites that just take the one quote about her like looking in her. This is where it's tricky.
Yeah.
She looks into her sister's like vagina or whatever, and you just see.
It says she leaned down and between her legs and carefully spread open her vagina. She didn't resist. When I saw what was inside, I shrieked. My mother came running. I said, "Mama, Mama, Grace has something in there." My mother didn't bother asking why I had opened Grace's vagina. This was within the spectrum of things I did. She got on her knees and looked for herself. It quickly became apparent that Grace had stuffed 6 or 7 pebbles in there. My mother removed them patiently while Grace cackled, thrilled at her prank had been a success. So that was like the first passage about this kind of stuff.
And it's like, that is so much to unpack. It's like, when in the episode where she's talking about a book, when she's like selling the book to that one place, she's like, I'm the person that just stuff that you take between your friends or whatever, I like put it all out there. And it's just like, this is like, I don't know, like here's the thing, you wrote it, like you put this in there, like I don't know what it's doing. Like it freaks me out.
How did that affect Grace?
Yeah,
because Grace now has that out there with like the knowledge
people
of
got
that
on
happened with her.
Because Grace, her sister, is a lesbian, I believe.
Okay.
And she has come out and like defended in vague tweets, like defended her sister and being like, no, like this is people trying to put like heteronormative sexual stuff on people. And there have been child, because the claim comes out that she's a child molester, or like she's that Lena Dunham is a molester for this situation here, and another part later. But some news articles would say that she was 17 when she did this, not 7 and 1. You know, which is a huge difference. The thing about this really, because in some places cut out the part about Grace having pebbles in there, which kind of creeps me out in a weird way, like that tryptophobia of like that like fear of like dots or clumps up holes around stuff. I don't know. I just picture that being like, I feel like that would be traumatizing too for Hannah for Lena Dunham, like. Yeah, to like Hannah. To like look in there and just see like all this weird shit, and I don't know, like seeing a vagina for your first time, if you at a young age, is also like, it just looks so different, you know. If you were a guy, I guess, like I don't know.
Where I think Lena Dunham went wrong is like later on in the passage, she says that she was like bribing her sister because she wanted her sister's affection so much. And she says, and I quote, basically anything a sexual predator might do to woo a small suburban girl, I was trying. And I was like,
oh, have you read that whole passage, like in that book, where it's like, oh, I would do this, I would give her candy and for 5-second long kisses and stuff like that. And for me, when I put the two together, the sister put the pebbles in her vagina to play a prank on Hannah, knowing that Hannah wanted to look there. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing. But that's the thing. Like
you keep calling her Hannah.
Oh, sorry, Lena Dunham. Sorry. Yeah, I mean they're the same person, really.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing. Like, it's not just like, oh, Lena Dunham was there. Something was going weird with her sister, and she did it. It was like Lena Dunham wanted to look at that age, wanted to look there, and the sister knew it, so she stuffed stuff in there for that to happen. You know, like it was a recurring thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also another thing where she's like, describes masturbating while in bed next to her younger sister, and I don't know if that was the same age range as this whole stuff.
Yeah,
but
I couldn't find the passage of that. I didn't see like a book page of it.
Yeah,
I
couldn't find that either.
That was the one I was like, is that? But the sexual predator one, the one where she says, I was doing anything to get her affection, kind of like a sexual predator. Like, she literally wrote those words into the book.
Yeah, I think that's where she fucked up.
I mean,
because
I also would wonder if Grace would want all this stuff to be written too, but she seemed to defend her sister for it. But there was critique of her outing her sister in the book, basically, because I don't think her sister was openly out at this point when the book came out. And there's been like child therapists like that they interviewed about this, and some say the stuff that she was doing at 7 and 1 would just be considered inappropriate, not sexual abuse per se.
Yeah,
and
that's what I was going to bring up. They're saying like it's weird for sure.
Yeah,
like when you think about it as an adult, but like this is just a lot of the stuff that kids do. Like they're exploring their own bodies and being like, what does this thing do? I mean,
like when kids take baths together when they're like little and they're just like running around naked and they don't know what's what fully, and they're just kind of, what is this? And because what she says in it, she asks her mom is like, does her vagina look like my vagina? And her mom's like, it's just a little smaller or whatever, you know, like trying to, because kids ask weird questions and stuff all the time. But it is a weird thing to, I think the combination of having seen Girls and then reading this book and like being like, what? Like if you watch season 2 and then you just read end of season 2 and then read this book and read this, you'd be like, what is up with this person?
And I think that's what a lot of the criticism came from, because like if you watch the show, and especially the end of season 2, it's just uncomfortable to watch, and reading some of these passages, it's uncomfortable and be like, this girl's got issues and she needs help, and there's some like, why is this person even like having a television show? Because it's just so much bizarre behavior. And
it's tricky because I try to think about it, because she got critiqued for this being like the white privilege of her being able to do this and not like immediately getting canceled or feeling comfortable being able to do this, which I will not deny that as a case, but I'll also say that that's a problem more with the systemic nature of things than it is with her doing it, you know?
Yeah. Like I remember when this show first came out, like instead of having Girls over as the title card, they had the same font and it just said Nepotism. Yeah. Because all of the actresses in the show had some kind of ties to like major directors. Allison Williams' father's obviously like a big or was a big news anchor. And so it's like a lot of like, of course, all these privileged white girls are going to get a show. And like she got greenlit the show with apparently like just half a page of a concept.
Well, I was reading some stuff and it was that she did that movie Tiny Furniture that people liked. And that got passed around. A lady at HBO saw a show that she was doing after seeing that movie, and then Judd Apatow saw it and he was like, oh wow, that actress actually wrote and directed it, got in touch, and they were doing Girls, and then he hopped onto that. So once you get Judd Apatow hopping on too, like you're going to greenlight it. Like, and the thing I'll say is it's weird, but I'm okay with the nepotism level of the show because of how bad the girls are. It's not like Gossip Girl or Sex and the City or something. If you know, like where it's like, hey, this is what we're doing and we're all good for this and this is how it should be. You know, like it's not glamorizing their lives. They're miserable and they're bad people.
I was just about to ask you, do you think that this show glamorizes this type of behavior?
No, not at all. Like you don't want to be any of these girls. Like, I mean, I feel like girls, people can relate to them. Certain people relate to one of the characters or another one. They're like, oh yeah, Like, because this is not 100%, but there is some real accuracies of being that age, living in Brooklyn at that time. Like,
well, I remember when the show or the movie Joker came out, people were like kind of upset about it, and they were like up in arms and said the criticism of that was like, this movie glamorizes this villainous kind of anarchist behavior. And I feel like that same kind of argument could be made about the show Girls, where it's like this show glamorizes, you know, being a shitty woman in your early 20s. And so I could see how the argument could be made to be like, yeah, but these people are on TV, and like, I guess it's some kind of reptilian thing in our minds of like, these people are on TV, so we should look up to them because they're on TV or whatever.
And that whole Joker argument was stupid to begin with too, considering like, if you just think of any other type of movies, like it just, there's so many more damaging characters. Like, I just don't. Yeah.
See, that's what I always got confused about with the show Girls, because I didn't know if it was, because when I was first introduced to it and when I heard people talking about it before we started doing this podcast, it was like, this is what being a girl is like, and this is like a big, I guess, like moment for feminism, and it's like, this is a feminist show. And then I was watching it and I was like, I wouldn't want this to represent me. You know, if there was a for lack of a better term, a boys show, and all of the guys were like, you know, assholes, and they'd go around like, I don't know, just manipulating people emotionally and like home wrecking and doing all kinds of crazy shit, I'd be like, I don't want to be associated with this. Like, I don't like this. I don't subscribe to it.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things. Like, we're both from Maryland and Baltimore, and The Wire is the show that everyone thinks of when they think of Baltimore, like, no matter what. And that is a part of Baltimore. It definitely is 100%,
sure.
But it's not all of it. And like, Meg Ryan's character in Sleepless in Seattle lives in Baltimore, you know, like that's another Baltimore like reference and stuff. Like, you know, like for me, it's like Girls is showing another side of that. Because anytime you show New York at this point with the group of people, like again, Friends and Seinfeld and those type of shows, it's like, oh, look at these, like, everything's going great. Sex and the City. Oh, wow, we're going out, we're living here, and we're buying these $10,000 shoes and, like, you know, like all of that. And this is like, no, this is just broke people living in apartments. And it's like what Broad City kind of did. It was funny and showed, hey, this is another aspect. I think there's a room for everything to show it. It's a problem if you go like, oh, this is the definitive statement of Girls.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
This does not define. This doesn't. And she even mentions it in the early thing. She says, "I want to define a generation and stuff." And like, in the show, and we're just like, no. I mean, there are elements of it, but it's also through her filter.
I mean, the show did have a pretty big cultural impact. Like, there's no denying that. But I wouldn't want it to be like, this is the defining women in their 20s in the like 2010s.
But that happens with any show that comes out that is different than anything else. Like, like, again, we talked about Sopranos. That was like a big defining, changing thing because the main character didn't have to be likable. I don't particularly like the Sopranos that much. Like, I didn't really enjoy it, but it was like a defining thing. I can still not like it and still have it be considered this groundbreaking thing. You know?
Well, I mean, going back to our, I hate to bring it up again because we talked about it at length, but going back to our favorite anime, Death Note, the main character of that is a serial killer, and he's a psychopath, and you're not supposed to like him, but you do watch it because you're like, wow, what an interesting person. Yeah. So that's where I could see, like, these are all interesting things going on with these girls. Let me see what's going on. They're so crazy.
Think about this. People, I mean, we've gotten a little off topic, but think about like the Real Housewives and stuff. People watch those shows because they don't like the characters. They watch them be assholes and stuff. They're enjoying the entertainment of them bickering and making fun of them. Like, that's the problem. Is if you take Girls and be like, whoa, that's not exactly how it is. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
But that you can't like, because it's trying to be high art in a way, people want to come down on it in that way. But no, I mean, there are stuff to say, like, she got the job not because of who she knew, but because of what she did. That's how she ended up getting girls. That's the one thing I'll say.
Yeah, it's not like she had no experience being a screenwriter or making things happen before.
Yeah, no, she was doing her stuff. She put the work in. They gave her a chance, and they helped her through it. A lot of people don't get that opportunity, get the chance. She definitely had the privilege to have the opportunity to go to college and make her own movie. And, you know, like, some people don't even have that chance to, they have the talent, but don't have the opportunity to even have the funds or the resources to do it. Now, you can be jaded and mad because of that, which it's rightfully so. But I'm not going to.
Well, I mean, even she addressed like, privilege definitely did help me out.
Absolutely.
Get the show off the ground. But I also, there's like something to say for like writing your own experience. Like, one of the things that was weird to me about that, the most recent Quentin Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, was when everybody was criticizing him for not including Margot Robbie more in the movie.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is the movie that he wants to make. Who are you to say like his creative vision?
Yeah. It wasn't one of those things where it's like, there's not a, okay, you have this many people in, you have to have this many ethnicities, you need to have this many lines for each person. Like, that's not how the issue that people bring up with diversity in film is that there's too many things that are just white centric, as you say, you know, like, when we were growing up, like when I was growing up, at least there was Martin on, there was like
the Wayans brothers.
Like, there were shows where it was like, and it wasn't like these were on just only black channels, you know, like you would turn on and be like, oh, that's a show with all black people on it, and it's just on like NBC's thing. Like, the closest,
I remember Bernie Mac was on
Fox. Yeah, like, you just had a show that would come on in between, and you're like, oh, we can just have this. Like Cosby Show, like Cosby with all of his flaws, was a show where like, oh, people were all just watching that, and it was like, oh, you can just watch people like that aren't the same color as you on TV, and that's the thing. And it's not. I don't want them to just give everybody an opportunity, but just having someone like Lena Dunham shoehorn a black character into this group would just be so awkward to me.
Yeah, and that's kind of what her reaction was, where she was like, that this would just not be authentic, and then I'm writing a character that I don't have any kind of connection or experience
and
with.
And then she brings in a black writer to just write for the black character on the show. It would just be such a weird thing, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, today that would be like, yeah, they only hired me because blah, 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 and like, that's the only reason I got a job. It's like, dude, it's complicated as hell.
No, it is.
I mean,
I just feel like I don't want to. I wouldn't want to be mixed up. Like, imagine the grief that the black character in this show would be. Like, you can't, with that privilege, you can show these white girls acting as horrible as they are and getting away with it. But if Jessel was black, oof,
yeah, if Jessel was black and then robbed the store, like she did in the fucking,
and had a drug problem. Like, you know how problematic that would be to have your character with the drug problem be the black girl, the black friend in the group. Like, it's just, I don't know.
That'd be rough.
Yeah. So I'm happy that, I feel like if you want to criticize her on the sex stuff and the molestation jokes and all that.
Yeah. I mean, back to like the previous point about like her sister and like the quote unquote molestation, like it inspired a lot of like, you know, people writing reaction articles to it, and child therapists coming out and talking about it, and pediatric people coming out and like defending it and being like, yeah, it's not that weird. But then there's also like all these super conservative people being like, yeah, this is abuse.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like at the time when you're 7, you don't even really know what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, but it's weird that she's writing about it older and labeling herself as a sexual predator in the book too.
Yes.
Like, so it's like she reflects back on it and she's just like, oh, this is something that happened, and not like, oh, what the fuck was I doing? You know what I mean? Like that level of it's weird. It's like, do you wish that she just did, like, she could have played it safe and just not put it in the book?
Yeah.
But then does that make it better that now she has this like thing? You know, it's
it's very weird.
Super weird. Like, and I will say, if you feel a certain way about that, just based off of what she actually did, you are entitled to feel that way. You don't need to worry about spinning it for some like agenda or anything. If you read that and you said, what? I don't trust this person, I don't like it, more power to you. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
If you say, oh, this is just kids being kids, and it's awkward, but it's not like something I'm going to crucify for, then fine too, you know?
Yeah. So the next controversy that, this is the one that I'm the most familiar with, because I remember when this happened and I read several articles about it, because I was like, what the hell? Because I just read the quotes out of context and I was like, I need to get this whole story.
And that was before we've watched the show, right?
Yeah. I mean, this controversy regards her attending the Met Gala and sitting, I think, next to Odell Beckham Jr. from the former, at the time, he was the star player for the New York Giants. Now he's on the Cleveland Browns. Mm-hmm. But she was talking, I think it was on a podcast, where she was talking about sitting next to, here's the quote. I was sitting next to Odell Beckham Jr., and it was so amazing because it was like he looked at me and he determined I was not the shape of a woman by his standards. He was like, that's a marshmallow. That's a child. That's a dog. It wasn't mean. He just seemed confused. The vibe was very much like, do I want to fuck it? Is it wearing yep, it's wearing a tuxedo. I'm going back to my cell phone. It was like we were forced to be together, and he was literally scrolling Instagram rather than to have to look at a woman in a bow tie. I was like, this should be called the Metropolitan Museum of Getting Rejected by Star Athletes.
It's it's one of those things where you can just see the writer brain trying to like write this like long joke piece thing, and it just failing so miserably and being so wrong. And then also, it's not like if she said this about, if this was a stand-up routine and she was saying this about some fictional person, it would kill. It would be fine. Like, she'd be making fun of herself and making fun of how someone looked at her. It'd be completely fine. But then once she personifies it as this athlete who, in no way, she projected all this onto a real person and then put his name out there to make it seem like he's the one who had all these feelings that are obviously Lena Dunham processed.
Yeah.
Like, that's where it's wrong. That, and in her apology, she even goes on to talk about like the sexualization of like black men and just throwing that out there. Like, this, it's a lot to unpack, and she unpacks it in her apology that came out probably way too late. Like, probably she should never have said this.
Yeah, well, it's also like the entitlement of like, you better think I'm sexy. Mm-hmm. It's like, why? It's just like this weird power dynamic thing where she's like, because I don't know, she's like, you should be attracted to me and you're not. And like, I don't know, man. It was just, I remember reading this and being like, wow, what an a-hole.
Yeah, this is damning. Like, it's one of those ones where, so he wasn't paying attention to you, so then you completely just wrote a narrative about him. Like, this is like when you see a person on the subway and you need to write their whole life story and their judgments, you know?
Yeah, she projected so much onto him. And like, here's the thing about, I've never been to the Met Gala before, obviously. I'm a fucking nobody comedian. Mm-hmm. Not after this podcast, though. We're going to be superstars, baby. But those type of things, I have to imagine they're incredibly boring, and I wouldn't want to be there. And the only reason you are there is to like get your picture taken and like show face and blah, 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 blah. I would be bored out of my mind. I would be scrolling through Instagram, and it's like, and then you're going to make me have to talk to Lena Dunham, who I would guarantee Odell Beckham Jr. has no idea who that is.
Exactly. No idea who that is. And if he even kind of had seen an episode of Girls or Two, would not have probably recognized her dressed how she said she was dressed.
Yeah.
So, and then it just projects that all he's doing is looking around to see who he can get laid by. That's what you're putting on. It's like the athlete cliche, the black guy cliche. It's all just thrown. All those stereotypes are just thrown at it. He's like, oh, can't fuck that. I don't want it. Like, no, dude. Like,
dude, Odell Beckham's around offensive linemen all the time. Those guys are fucking way bigger than Lena Dunham. You know what I mean?
Like, it's just like, it's just such a, it's such a, her projecting like, oh, I guess I'm not worthy enough. And then throwing it, I really don't like it. Do you have her apology tweet?
I to her credit, she did apologize.
And I think her apology is well written and it brings up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it does bring up a lot of stuff, and it is, I mean, you got to give credit where it's due, because when those comments came out, I was like, holy shit, what an asshole. But her apology said, I owe Odell Beckham Jr. an apology. Despite my moments of bravado, I struggle at industry events and in my life with the sense that I don't rep a certain standard of beauty. So when I show up at the Met Ball surrounded by models and swan-like actresses, it's hard not to feel like a sack of flaming garbage. It has felt especially intense with a handsome athlete as my dinner companion and a bunch of women I'm sure he'd rather be seated with. I went ahead and projected these insecurities and made totally narcissistic assumptions about what he was thinking, then presented those assumptions as fact. I feel terrible about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what she did. And I think if we take this as a learning, as society, as a learning lesson, as something you can learn from, it's like, because we make snap judgments all the time. Like Malcolm Gladwell talks about it in Blink of an Eye. Or Blink, I think it's just called. I think Blink of an Eye is a editing book or something.
I don't know. I don't read books. This is the most amount of reading I've done in forever.
You look like you're sweating.
You say a book? Malcolm Gladwell?
But yeah, it's just like if she doesn't write or doesn't say what she was thinking there, she still has that thought process in her mind. Like she would have done it the next event she went to and the next event. And she would have judged people silently and would have never been called out for it, and then would have never been able to learn from it. And
and I mean, we all have those feelings though, like that she was talking about with Odell Beckham. Yeah. Like if you're talking, like I felt that, like if I'm talking to like a really, really pretty girl and then it's like you're getting kind of blown off, it's like, fuck you, you know? But to like name his name and be like, you should talk to me because it's like maybe he's just not that interested in talking to you, but he doesn't know who you are.
The specificity of like calling. And here's the thing that gets me. It's the comfortability that she had to call him out, knowing that she could probably call him out and it'd be fine. But like if it was Brad Pitt or something, she probably wouldn't have said it that way. You know, she wouldn't have said it about Leo or like a white actor and being like, oh, he wasn't paying attention. But for an athlete, a black athlete, that seems like he's just like, whatever. If it was a black athlete or rapper or something, she probably felt like, oh, I could just say this about him because this is what we think of them already. That's the issue.
If it was Tom Brady, she wouldn't have said his name.
She'd be like, here's the thing. It would have been like, oh, Tom Brady didn't even pay attention to me. But whatever, you know, it would have had like no malice. It would have been joking probably. But with this, it's like, oh. You know,
here's the thing is I feel like a lot of her stuff is like the detail, like when she talks about like I was doing all the same stuff that a sexual predator would do. It's like you're damning yourself when you include names, when you name names on that kind of stuff. If you had just said like I was sitting next to this athlete and like I don't think it would have been a controversy. But she went with the specificity of like it was this guy and this is what this guy Odell Beckham Jr. was thinking. Yeah, it's like that you can't do that to people.
Yeah, exactly. If she was just like, oh, I was sitting next to this person and he must have thought this, everyone would laugh and the jokes would be funny and we'd be like, oh, look at her making fun of herself or whatever. But this was an attack on him, not a reflection of her, because of how she feels about herself. Instead of just making it fully her, she projected that on it. And that's what she says in her apology, which I'm glad she was able to be aware of it and to,
Yeah, I mean, that's a learning thing that doesn't show up in the show because nobody ever learns in the Showgirls. So hopefully Lena Dunham, she learned from this. There's other controversies. Like there's one where she said that she wished she had an abortion because she wanted to better understand women who have had abortions. And a lot of people found that was like insensitive and weird to say. And she then also had another apology.
Yeah, that sounds like one of those, again, like one of those like stand-up writing jokes. Like you're just writing it and you're like, I wonder if I can make this funny or if this works. And it doesn't quite, but you already hit publish, you just hit send already on that.
Yeah. I mean, that one's just like, I feel like we don't really need to go too much into detail with that. It's just like kind of like
followed up on that one really at all.
Yeah, that one's just kind of like a boneheaded thing to say, where it's just like people that get abortions are usually like not thrilled about it.
I mean, it's not every abortion is just like, oh, whatever, gotta get rid of this. Like it's not people deliberate on it,
Yeah, it's a complicated issue, obviously, and like. To just be like, I wish I had one. Like I could see how that would rub people the wrong way.
And I'm gonna hardly plug my friend's movie, Obvious Child with Jenny Slate. My friend from college directed that movie, and and that's a really good movie about abortion and that. It's very So check that
Tackles
out.
the complicated issues about it.
The thing I was gonna say, we just had an episode where Elijah said something crazy about like the Elijah line about Pal being gay and
we recently reviewed the episode 1 of season 4, and Elijah has a line about if they didn't live in New York, his ex-boyfriend Pal, who's a short guy, kind of like chubby, I guess, he was like, if we didn't live in New York, this guy would have definitely killed himself by now. It's like, whew.
Yeah, it's just like, it has more venom than it needs to, right? Like,
right, absolutely.
And I
remember, I mean, we talk about that. Check out that episode too. But there's a couple more controversies about like, her defending people that were accused of sexual assault and stuff like that. I remember there's one on. So in her Wikipedia entry about controversies, there's one that isn't listed that I distinctly remember.
Okay.
And it was about how she had rescued a dog.
Oh, yeah.
And she was all about this dog, would post about it on her Instagram like almost every day and be like, hey, here's updates about this dog. And then like, I don't remember exactly how far into owning or adopting this dog it is, she gave it back up to the rescue shelter because she was like, this is too much responsibility for me.
I think we talked about this on one of the episodes too.
Yeah. And people were pissed about it. They were like, how could you be like a person that like advocates adopting or rescuing dogs and then you just give it up? Like you didn't realize what a response, but like, to be fair, like, what are you supposed to do in that situation? Like, if you adopt a dog, right? And then you're like, oh my God, this is too much responsibility for me. What are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to just keep it and then like be a bad dog owner?
Dude, it's interesting, like hearing the way you phrase that and like thinking about the abortion talk we had. Like, because if it was a baby, you couldn't just like give it back. Like, you know what? I thought I wanted to be a mom. I don't really like it. I mean, you guess you could put it up for adoption, but like I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like if you know that you're not gonna be a good mother, like you shouldn't just keep trying. That's how I feel about it anyway. Like you shouldn't just like be a shitty parent. You know?
No, I mean, and her busy schedule. Like, here's the thing. Like, in the pandemic that we're in currently, there's a lot of people who were like inside and like are getting dogs and puppies and stuff, like because they're like, oh, I just need some companionship. And then once things go back to like normal hustle bustle schedule, there's going to be a lot of, oh yeah, this was fine when I was at home 24/7.
This is a lot of responsibility that I didn't realize was going to be such a responsibility when I got this.
Yep. There's going to be a lot of
I know at least 3 people that have adopted dogs during coronavirus quarantine. And I've always wanted a dog, and there were times where I've like seriously looked into it and been like blah blah blah, but I decided against it because I know I'd be a terrible dog owner. Like when the world is like working as usual, I go to work and then at night I do comedy. I'm not home. I'm only home for like 10 hours a day, and 8 of them are sleeping. Like, I would be such an asshole if I got a dog, but I knew that. And I think that's the reason why people criticize Lena Dunham. It's like, you should have known that you're not going to be a good dog parent.
And anytime it's anything to do with dogs or pets or whatever, it's people go crazy. Like, I remember when like our reaction to Jessa getting a basket full of puppies.
Oh my God.
And we were just so happy that they returned those puppies. Like, they said it in a line in like a later episode, but we were so worried that those puppies and Jessa, I was just like, no. Because
you see the puppies in one episode, and then they don't mention the puppies for like 4 more episodes, and you don't see them.
It's like when they're breaking up or something, and they mention like, oh, I had to get rid of the puppies, and we're like, whew, okay.
Yeah. We were like, whew, thank God.
The controversy that you had brought up about her defending
a guy that was a person that was accused of a sexual assault.
Yeah, was he on the staff or something, or was that?
Yeah, he was a writer for Girls, a guy named Murray Miller.
Okay.
And the actress Aurora Perrineau accused him of sexually assaulting her in 2012 when she was 17. And Lena Dunham's response was, while our first instinct is to listen to every woman's story, our insider knowledge of Murray's situation makes us confident that, sadly, this accusation is one of the 3% of assault cases that are misreported every year. And there was a lot of backlash from that statement. Lena Dunham apologized, said that it was absolutely wrong time to come forward with such a statement, and that every woman who comes forward deserves to be heard fully and completely, and our relationship to the accused should not be part of the calculation anyone makes when examining the case.
I'll say this, she's really good at the apologies. Like, the apologies are really
like she sticks her foot in her mouth a lot, but then when she comes through with the apology, it's like, oh, okay.
Like, if these apologies weren't apologies, but just ways people should think about things when they go about stuff, it'd be really poignant. Yeah. Like the way she says that you shouldn't take in your relationship with someone into consideration when that comes up, you know?
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, it that's the thing, is like her apologies, like she should think about that before she acts.
She should think about what she's going to say and then be like, what would the apology be for this? Like, or will I have to write an apology? Do I have the time and energy to write another 2-page apology for this one line I'm about to say? It's like she's allowed to get away with certain things in a narrative form of Girls, you know what I mean? And they gave her a long leash. I'm surprised the show went 6 seasons. I thought it was only 5.
Absolutely. I'm surprised that Lena Dunham, the person, is a lightning rod for like people that are, I guess, like anti-feminist. They go after Lena Dunham hard. Like those people like that, like misogynist, they absolutely hate her. And no person is without like some controversial opinion or like something that people might dislike. But like, I feel like a lot of the hate after reading the apologies that she's put out, she said she's done some boneheaded things. She's made some mistakes. Absolutely.
And apologies
for sure.
don't fully negate the actions, but at least it's an acknowledgement of it. And which seems like in a more genuine way where it might sink in, not just like, if I apologize, they won't cancel my show. Like, it's not that.
Yeah.
Like, she's had to make these apologies regardless of like status of what she's working on.
Yeah, these apologies aren't the I'm sorry if you're offended.
Yeah.
It's like, I think of these mistakes as Lena Dunham just putting her foot in her mouth, being kind of a bonehead, not realizing like the shitty things that she's saying at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then once people point out how shitty they are, she's like, oh no, like that's not what I meant at all. I could see how people would be pissed about that. Like, these apologies seem sincere and genuine.
Yeah. And it's a weird time because you should be able to learn from your mistakes instead of if you make a mistake, that's it. And it's a difference between making a mistake and being completely flawed in that. Like, if she's consistently made mistakes, but they've been different mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, if she's consistently making the same mistake over and over and over again, you're like, and then apologizing, you're like, no, like, you don't, these apologies mean nothing. You're just going to keep doing that. But she keeps finding new ways to
stick a foot in her mouth.
Yeah. And again, if you don't like Lena Dunham, we are not trying to sway your opinion. We are not defending her or advocating for her. We would be remiss if we didn't bring up the stuff that is obviously part of her thing. We're doing a retrospective show, like.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing I'll say about like defending and stuff like that is I didn't watch Girls, and my only exposure to Lena Dunham was like these controversies, like especially the Odell Beckham one. That was my exposure to her, and I was like, wow, what an ass. Like, this is like typical like entitlement assholey behavior. And that was like, you know what, fuck this lady. Like, I wrote her off completely. But like reading more into this kind of stuff and like seeing where she's coming from, I feel more like, okay, now I have a more full picture of what it was, as opposed to just like reading the clickbait articles where she's like, he said I'm a marshmallow and he didn't want to fuck me, so he thought that I wasn't a valuable human.
Exactly. I didn't want to just take a half of a quote and be like, well, she's terrible. Like, I wanted to get the whole process, get the story, get the framing, get the time, like the time frame of like, oh, this is what's happening then, But yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that's questionable.
I mean, one of the more recent controversies that she got into is she was hired to write the screenplay about a Syrian refugee, and the hiring led to some backlash about like a Syrian woman should have been hired as opposed to Lena Dunham. And
that's always the tricky. I mean, Tarantino wrote Django Unchained, which I enjoyed a lot, and I read the script, and the script's great. And I'm not gonna. I mean, you could easily say, "Oh, a black person should have written that script," but that's the script that he wrote. And it's one thing what he wrote it for himself and then sold it, as opposed to like being hired by the studio system. And that's really it's a fundamental issue with the way the system is set up, which is the problem,
I mean, the thing that people were upset about is like Lena Dunham apparently is like all about representation and it's like crucial to the quote here is Lena Dunham constantly talks about representation as crucial to enrich storytelling, yet in practice she has shown a disregard for actually elevating those voices. Now she's been signed on to write a Syrian refugee story, and author Alia Malik said, the idea that Lena Dunham is better situated to tell the story of a Syrian than someone else is implicit in that kind of hierarchy about, I guess.
It's one of those things where if a story has like 4 people of color in it and 3 white people in it for your characters, do you now only can hire like, you know what I mean? Like, can you not hire a white person to write a story that's not something else? And can you I think the issue the other way is that Black people only get chances to be hired on stuff, or like people of color only get like, oh, this is a story about a Mexican dancer, like we need to hire a Mexican writer for it. It's like, oh, can that person not write the random just like rom-com, like that's the thing that where the issue is. It's like, oh, well, this one's about slaves, so like let's have a Black person come on and write this. And like, can that Black person just write the space adventure like movie? That's where the disconnect for me comes in. And if she wants to champion people of color and like diversity in writing, like she can do that through producing and through stuff. But if she's gonna write something, it's gonna be through her, and it's gonna be a white person writing whatever she writes. Like,
I mean, this is
it's not an easy solution of just, oh, this person writes, these people write these type of movies and these people write these type of movies. Like, that is not a good...
And it's also like, I don't know, man. It's like at a certain point if you get hired to like do something and then people are like, it should be somebody else. It's like, what are you supposed to, or should you just like give up your jobs? Like, you have a right to work as well. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what's happening in animation right now with like the guy who played Cleveland in Family Guy, and Allison Brie, who plays like a half Asian.
In Big Mouth.
Yeah, in Big Mouth.
And Jenny Slate in Big Mouth. And everyone's
like, oh, I shouldn't play these characters with that. And it's one of those things where the question is, why did they decide that, oh, I'm going to have Jenny Slate be this character? Why did I make the character Black in the show? You know what I mean? Like, if you are going to make the character, if you're going to hire Jenny Slate, like have the character be, it's like if the character's drawn Black, and it's like, oh, that's diverse in the group, even though it's not. Like, I don't know. But then you also have Bart Simpson voiced by a woman, and I don't think, like, I don't think you need to like say, oh, she can't do the voice of Bart because she's a woman doing a kid. It's like that's where you get into that weird.
It's really complicated, man. And I don't know the solution.
No, we're gonna solve it in the next 2 minutes. So this is
okay. Cool. Most recently, though, Lena Dunham got COVID-19.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily controversial, but
it's so controversial because it's a made up. Because it's a made up disease.
Because it's 5G towers are doing it.
Oh no, she had it. She recovered, but she was ill for like 3 weeks. Like she had the I had a friend from high school who got it, and there was a little article about it, and it hit him hard. Like, it's a real thing. And
yeah, it's nuts how like it hits some people so hard, and other people it's just like, I had a fever for a day and then like I was fine.
I think that's what makes it dangerous,
nuts, man.
That's what makes it spreadable.
Absolutely.
You don't know if it was like measles or chickenpox, you'd be like, oh, I can see that you're sick. But if you're walking around fine and you're just a carrier, and it's tough. But
and
this is
that's. I mean, obviously, she gets into some hot water with like she's a hardcore liberal, and like those quote unquote controversies that like right wing conservative or like extreme people on the right, they'll come after her all the time for that, just for her political beliefs. So that's always going to be there. But otherwise, that about wraps up all the controversies surrounding Lena Dunham that we've alluded to in the reviews of the show. And it's been nice to like get a more full picture about it.
And it's good to talk about these things, and that's something I didn't want us not to do, but we didn't want this to shape our view of the show when we first started. So now that we're 3 seasons in, middle, I feel like now's the time we can take a look. And
we're about halfway through, and now we can decide we hate the show still, and it makes sense why.
And we'll have to rejudge our girls' rankings.
The likability rankings are different now.
Go back down to like, well, Hannah did say that thing. Lena Dunham said that thing and played by Hannah. So Anything else, Vance, to add on here? No, I think we I mean, some of this stuff is very old news but some people might not have remembered it, knew about it. And yeah, this is just our thoughts and how we.
Yeah. And once again, we don't know all the whole story with some of these things. So taking what we're saying with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
We just did a little bit of research because we talk about these themes in the show. So we thought that we should be like, hey, this is the story and this is what we're talking about when we bring up those things. So if you ever were listening to one of our episode reviews and you're like, what was the full story on that? This episode was to provide like at least a little bit more information about the stuff that we're talking about.
Because if people get their news just from us, then that is if you're going to get your news from us, we wanted to do at least a little bit of homework.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for keep listening. Give our episode reviews a listen. It's a lot less potentially controversial than this. But who knows, you know? Yeah,
we just go where the show goes, man.
Sometimes I will trash a woman's earrings for a good 4 to 5 minutes. It's controversy.
Yes, the fashion corners are canceled.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Have a good one. See ya.